Hello everyone and welcome to the Halo 2 Ultimate Campaign Tweaks walkthrough. This is the modded version of the mission The Arbiter, and you'll see the changes that I've made almost immediately when you reach the bottom of this ramp. We have double the number of grunts and one more elite. These elites dual wield plasma rifles, and the beam rifle guy is now over here. They start out sort of together in clusters because I couldn't get them to move their spawn, but they do spread out as soon as the task finishes speaking. He'll stand by the door until you go through, in which case he'll follow. So this mod essentially changes some of the weapon spawns and a few of the encounters to this mission just to make it a little bit different. And you also get more allies, which is
You may wish to do the same, Arbiter. But take heed. Your armor system is not as new as ours. Your camouflage will not last forever.
Now, I do love a good stealth mission. I may screw up some of these encounters here. It's most important, I suppose, so this one. After this particular encounter isn't as bad, I believe there should be one more thing. So as you'll see going in, it's the heretics that have probably the most amount of changes here. I've tried to basically diversify some of their weapons. So you can see that one there has a plasma pistol instead of a needler. That's sort of a common theme. Some of the heretic grunts wield plasma rifles, but that's quite rare. I think the most common type of heretic grunt you'll encounter in this mod is the generic version with just a needler. Plasma pistols are also fairly common, but oh, goodbye. That is another thing about this mod, is that I've made changes so that you can basically take acceptable losses and not have to worry too much. That's sort of a recurring theme throughout these mods. You can see here the grunts will deploy their turrets separately. Sometimes, every so often, they will try and deploy the turret in the same place, but they'll always be next to each other, so even then they can still fight properly. I've done a fair few tests and I've not had any problems. So going down into this underbelly area, you'll start to see So there we have a plasma pistol grunt. There are occasionally some changes to the weapon spawns of the enemies. It isn't always the same. There's an element of not randomness, but certainly difference involved. But not always. These ones will always have plasma pistols. So there's somewhere. You may see grunts with plasma pistols here, but if you play through the mod, it might be a little bit different. There are a lot of different squads that can spawn, particularly in this section, this hangar section. So you can see there a dual-wielding heretic who's now dead. So here we go. So we have, okay, so it's chosen 2 needlers and a plasma pistol grunt, but the spawn pool there is quite large, and occasionally you can get some with plasma rifles, which we'll probably see as we go on. In fact, there is one right there. Get out of my way, you. And also more dual-wielding heretics. Now, interestingly, depending on which side you choose to walk down here, that's what determines what type of heretics will spawn here. So I chose the left-hand side this time. If you go down the right-hand side, they can have different weapon spawns. And that's what I mean when I say that the weapon choices aren't truly random, in that the game will choose different things based on your actions, and also sometimes the actions of the AI. There's many variables involved, which I don't fully understand, but that is one that I have been able to decipher, which one you choose down this run here. Now, I've also changed the Phantom drop-off squads. So you see we've got an elite there with a carbine. That's to make up for the loss of our elite from before, I think. But other things that can drop here include a grunt with a plasma pistol, a grunt with a plasma rifle, and also, I believe, an elite with a beam rifle. Unfortunately, I couldn't change the actual number of allies that are dropped. I would have liked to have done that, but I think conveniently. Oh, they are merciless.
Holy prophet, where did he get that?
So it seems like a fair few of our Covenant have survived that encounter. Quite interested to know what happened to our Needler Grunts, because it seems like they have been killed in action. Unfortunately, the issue with adding more AI to a level like this is that it does make them more susceptible to grenade throws. I have noticed the more AI there are in an area, the more they sort of clump together, and that makes them very vulnerable. So you can see the addition of different weapons for the grunts just adds a little bit of diversity, because I understand, like, in theory, why Bungie chose to only arm the heretics with needlers and carbines, partly because they're the Covenant weapons that can be reloaded. So it makes sense for a sort of small faction like this to use weapons that can be reloaded. But they do just have a lot of Covenant weaponry sort of lying around. So you'd think, see, we have plasma rifle heretic grunt there, who is now dead. And I haven't changed every heretic, obviously. There are many of them that still have the same weapons that they have in the base game, like this guy who has his sentinel beam. And these guys here also have sentinel beams. So let's see if we have any survivors. Where did my dual-wielding guys go? They couldn't have died, surely. No, not here with us. Now, this can sometimes happen even in the base version of this level. They can sometimes get blocked. Well, it does seem like they must have been killed somehow. Another thing that is different about this mod is the allies that spawn for you in the corridors. Because not many people know this, but in this mission, after the Phantom section, if you do lose all of your allies, occasionally some will just spawn and appear out of nowhere seemingly to help you. And I've changed some of those up so that you get different combinations of.
Arbiter, how many is that?
Come along, Grans. Now, I've made a few changes to the weapons in this area, as you'll see. He just did a dive there.
Unwise to challenge me.
So we're approaching near the end here, or rather near the end of this section. You can see, again, more dual-wielding heretics that will barely get the chance to actually use their weapons. There's also a fair few grunts here with different weapons.
Deal with him, my brothers.
The heretic leader now wields the grunt birthday party skull, so if you're playing on legendary you'll be able to find that in its regular spot down at the bottom of the station. There used to be a glitch on the original version of this game where you could sword fly through the window to kill the heretic leader, or rather not kill him because you discover he's actually invincible, and it would also break the level if I remember correctly, but that seems to have been patched on MCC. It's one of the few Halo 2 glitches that was actually patched when the game was ported over to Master Chief Collection. There we go. Now, there aren't that many changes to this section, simply because there wasn't really much worth changing. You know, there's still grunts with the Fjord guns. Some of the grunts, I believe, do have different weapons here. But going through the entire section is actually not necessary, because as some of you may know, you can actually skip the entirety of this vehicle section by simply flying over here. Which, you know, if you want to do the Banshee section, then, you know, obviously isn't recommended, but for the purposes of this walkthrough, it isn't necessary for me to show every single section of this vehicle area, so... Although, do miss on the cool music, so... Which is strange, because the anniversary version has... It's just indecipherable noise, really. I understand that this is a song by a band. I think the band is Incubus, which is why they changed it, but it does seem does seem odd that the replacement song is so different from the original. So now we move on to the Oracle. Now, the Oracle is an interesting mission because it was probably my least favourite level in the game when I was playing Halo 2 as a kid. And part of the reason for that is that, unlike the Arbiter, the number of allies you get is very sparse. But as you'll see, in this modded version, you get far more allies. Possibly too many allies, but as you'll see, things become clear later, because this first section is infamous for essentially slaughtering your allies. So we'll see how many survive. This is playing on heroic as well, so
What happened here?
Always have bad feeling. You had bad feeling about morning food, Nickel.
Close your jaws, or I shall bind them shut.
See? Heretic!
Hold your fire. Hold your fire! I wondered who the prophets would send to silence me. An arbiter. I'm flattered. He's using a holodrome. He must be close. Come out so we may kill you. Get in line.
so it's a very atmospheric section, but you'll see here in a second. Let's just say, I don't think all of these grunts are going to make it.
Stand firm. Get blood.
Now it's interesting as well, that's how the infection forms kill in this game. They lift NPCs up into the air, and it's actually the fall that kills them, not the infection forms. I don't know if that was intentional. It certainly doesn't seem to be intentional. It's interesting, if you deplete Ratas's shields, sometimes you can actually get him to fly through the air.
What have they done? Go, Arbiter. I'll follow when our reinforcements arrive.
I'm sure you will, Ratas. I'm sure you will follow. Where's my carbine? Come on, guys. And here we are on the infamous elevator. Halo 2 does get a fair bit of criticism for essentially putting you into a lot of sections where you have to stay in one area and defend against waves and waves of enemies. And I suppose this is probably the most infamous. But as I said about the similar section in Outskirts, if there was a Halo Flood firefight mode, I'm sure fans would like that. And it would essentially be the same as this, wouldn't it? You'd be in an area, probably maybe a little bit bigger than this, but essentially doomed to just fight off waves and waves of flood until you succumb. Of course, it does make it a bit more manageable with more allies to fight with you. So especially on higher difficulties, by this point in the mission, sometimes on the original game you can have no allies left at all, which makes this entire sequence not only less manageable, but also, in my opinion, a bit more boring, because you're just sort of left here on your own.
It is well hidden.
Oh dear. Thought he was for it then. Ah, the symphony of Halo 2 physics.
Enemy of our Lord.
Oh, 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 is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it? Oh, he made it.
Spotted the enemy.
So if you push these crates off the side instead of shooting them, it sort of harmlessly disposes of the infection form. Also, interestingly, you can see them pulling the crates out here. If you destroy it here, and the infection form comes out, it'll complete the animation, but the crate will appear anyway. See? There it is. So I think we're nearly at the bottom now. Can't be long. I think, yeah, that's where we need to be. So I haven't made many changes to the Flood, because the amount of weapons that they have is fairly varied anyway. Later on in the game, there are some changes to the Flood. When you start encountering, I think it's on the mission High Charity, carrier forms have a much larger infection form dispersal, but I've kept them as having quite a small number in every other level. Because in this mission, they're only recently infected, and in the Sacred Icon and Quarantine Zone missions, having more infection forms come out would not only be a death trap in certain areas, but they're also supposed to be quite old, whereas the ones in High Charity are brand new. And it also helps to bridge the gap between this game and Halo 3, which, as you probably know, has carrier forms that spew out far many more infection forms when they're killed. It's quite handy with the carbine, that guy. That's a... Can't see what they're shooting at. Shockingly, I haven't lost a single ally this whole time. Which is very unusual, particularly for heroic difficulty. But I suppose that's just what the combined firepower does, really. Right, we finally reached the bottom.
We should have brought weapons to burn these bodies. Every one is a vessel.
Now, if I didn't lose any allies before, this is almost certainly where I'm going to start losing them. Oh, there we go. First casualty. Rest in peace. Ah,
Heretics above!
he'll die for that. Are all my grunts dead? Oh mate, love this. Gets pretty intense, this section. The music makes it even more harrowing. I'm convinced I still visit this place in my nightmares. It's getting more intense. Ah, finally, the door. Come on, everyone. Oh, don't be a hero. Come on. Get through the door. Come on, hurry. Come on, through the door. Ah, jeez, what are they up to? Come on, in. In. No, what's it doing? Oh, I guess he's decided to make the supreme sacrifice for the sake of the mission.
Leader, the storm is about to hit. We cannot maintain our position. Bring the Phantoms close to the mark. You're not leaving until the leader of these heretics is dead.
Well, this is the only instance in the actual game of this rank of grunt spawning. It's actually a mistake. They used the wrong tag. They put one of the elite Spec Ops tags in instead of one of the grunt Spec Ops tags, which is why it, spawns with the glitched armor. But I gave him a plasma rifle just, to make him stand out as something a bit unique. Now again, this is another one of the segments where, depending on which path you choose, you get different types of enemies. I'm going to go right. Oh dear. Oh, blimey. Didn't kill me. Thought I was done for then.
Right here.
So now we get to this section here. It is impossible to kill the heretic leader, no matter how hard you try. He is invincible.
Return to the landing zone. The Arbiter will continue upward, cut this station loose, and scare the heretic from his hole.
I love how they all just assume that he's going to die. You don't know that I'm the player character.
All my passengers are in the air, Arbiter. Go ahead, cut the cable.
Just had to check there that I was actually playing on heroic, because I've made no changes at all to the durability of the Arbiter in this mission, but it seems like the Sentinel beams are not causing as much damage as I would have thought.
One final cable, Arbiter.
I've been doing a lot of testing for the Sacred Icon mod for the most recent update to my mod, and I think the blue Sentinel beam causes a lot more damage than the orange one does, which is why I'm a little bit confused.
That's it. The station is in free fall.
I suppose I could up the damage of the Sentinel beam.
The heretic leader is on the move. Do not let him escape. We'll stay with you as long as we can.
I mean, I suppose it is just designed for fighting Flood, isn't it, really? Not shielded opponents. But it is still interesting. Sentinels, the generic Sentinels, are fairly rubbish.
Are you still alive, Arbiter? We're keeping pace as best we can.
Now, you'll see here, this is the only instance in this level of this happening. Sentinels with plasma pistols. Because it occurred to me that the Heretic Elites have Sentinel beams before the Sentinels have even been attacked or destroyed, so one has to wonder where they got them from. My logic for that is that they actually swapped them with these Sentinels, who shockingly can actually still kill things with them. In fact, to be honest, these guys are doing more damage to me than the actual Sentinels with the Sentinel beams were. Nope. He's angry, and now he's dead. Heretic leader seems to have swapped the Grunt birthday party skull for a plasma rifle.
What's bonus? They'll never escape this maelstrom and abandon it. Wait, the hangar. There was a Seraph fighter inside. Arbiter, you know what to do.
Admittedly, the anniversary cutscene is probably a little more dramatic than that. Now, this final section is basically a speed run. The drums make this bit. It's brilliant. Oh dear. See, it reminded me a lot of Halo Combat Evolved, this section, sort of going back through the geometry of the previous mission, but with Flood. That was kind of the raison d'etre of the final act of Halo Combat Evolved. Here we are. Now, I haven't made any changes to this initial section of the boss fight.
You disappoint your blessed hierarch. How did you ever make it past the flood? Myopic scoop.
It's a very sort of. I think this boss fight is a bit underrated, really. It's a classic, really, isn't it? You know, damage the boss enough, he disappears into a pipe.
This mining facility Constellation Alpha has several upgrades. It was retrofitted to research possible offensive and defensive measures.
And that's the Arbiter and the Oracle. I hope you enjoyed. You can download these mods with the link in the description.
Herald